What is good, everybody? The NFL Combine is just a couple of days away, so I figured let's talk a little NFL draft. So the Saints are selecting ninth overall this year, and in theory, okay, the Saints have a real chance at getting a cornerstone player for their offense or defense for years to come. Right now, of course, it doesn't always work out like that. There are no guarantees. All the time we see fifth, sixth, seventh rounders have way better careers than guys that were drafted in the first round. So it's no guarantee, obviously. But again, in theory, they have a chance, especially picking in the top 10 of this draft, at really getting a player that can contribute to their franchise for a lot of years to come. So let's talk about it. Picking ninth overall, the Saints, especially with them needing pretty much everything, like every position group needs help for the Saints, they would have to try really, really, really hard to screw this up. Like, this is going to be really hard to screw up. There is no wrong pick, I don't think, at number nine for the Saints. Whatever they decide to do, whatever position they decide to go with, whatever falls to them, I guess, there really is no wrong answer because if you look at it, let's look at the offensive line for the Saints. We got Fuaga at left tackle. That looks like a home run pick. Had a great rookie year. That looks slam dunk pick, right? Left guard, Lucas Patrick, he's a free agent. That was their starter last year, and he's 32. And let's be honest, he was more of a plug and play type guy rather than someone that you really count on having as your franchise left guard. Okay, center Eric McCoy. When he's healthy, he's a top five center in the league. But that when he is healthy has really become a thing now, right? I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm worried about his health. He hasn't been able to stay healthy recently. And so in the back of my mind, that's like something that you got to think about eventually because again, great center when he's healthy, but he just hasn't been able to stay on the field. And you can definitely tell the difference when he's on the field. I mean, both in the run game and pass game, it just everything works so much better when Eric McCoy is on the field. And then you look at the right guard position, Cesar Ruiz still under contract. Listen, you can do a lot worse than Cesar Ruiz, right? Maybe probably overpaid a little bit for him a couple of years ago when he signed that new contract. He has really bad games, he has really good games, and then he has games where you don't even notice he's there. And to me, that's the definition of average. And it kind of just is what it is. You could do way worse than Cesar Ruiz. And then talking about the right tackle position. Now, Trevor Penning, look, I think everybody was worried about Trevor Penning coming into last season because again, it's Trevor Penning and he's going to be starting at a new position. So everybody was, had the right to be worried. But I think, compared to expectations, I thought he vastly outperformed the expectations that were set for him by, us fans especially, right? Because he he wasn't horrible, right? He really wasn't horrible. He was actually one of the best run blocking tackles in the entire league. Like he was dominant in the run game. Of course, so much room for him to still improve in the pass game, but I think we saw him get better, right? And we have to remember that was his first year playing that position, right tackle. He's only going to get better. So I think right tackle, if you're going to roll with Trevor Penny, right? Because again, what he showed last year. Now, if you get to a situation where you're sitting there at number nine and somehow Will Campbell isn't off the board, then 100% you draft Will Campbell, right? If you have a chance to upgrade like almost immediately at that position, especially to a player as good as Will Campbell, then you absolutely take him and then figure out the rest from there, right? So, offensive line, you know, do I see them taking an offensive lineman in the first round? I don't really see it. And so let's look at the receiving core. You got Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and then pretty much nobody. Let's be honest, okay. And then even with those two guys, you got Chris Olave, who's had concussion problems. You know, listen, he's probably one or two away. Let's be honest. It's just being honest. And fantastic player, but it's concussion problems, right? And then you got Rashid Shaheed coming off of a season-ending knee injury, so that's a need. Like the Saints could go there at receiver. Could they? They could go with the guy from Arizona. Who knows? So receiver, I could definitely see them going there at number nine. Wouldn't be a bad pick at all. They need it, and even let's just say even if you have Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed at their full health, right? You still need another guy. Like you still need another guy because you don't want to find yourself in a position like you were in last year where you're throwing to Kevin Austin Jr. and other guys that nobody's ever heard of in their entire lives, right? And no just disrespect to those guys, but let's just keep it real here. Look at the running back rooms. Alvin Kamara, um, getting up there in age, ended the season with an injury, and I think he's still definitely able to be productive 100%. We saw it last year. He had, you know, uh, a really good year last year, especially compared to his last few years. So the production can still be there for Malcolm Kamara, but he needs help, man. He needs help. And I'm sorry, but that help is not Jamal Williams. And, Kendre Miller, I think another player, like when he is on the field, he can obviously produce and he's an explosive football player, but he just can't stay healthy. I mean, I don't know what kind of curse that guy has, but he just can't stay healthy. But I like him as a football player. But again, the Saints are sitting there at 9, and you got Ashton Genty there, and they decide, you know what, this offense, this team, this franchise needs some juice, needs some hype, and they decide to draft Ashton Genty. Hey, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it at all. I know the NFL went through a period of time there where drafting a running back in the first round, especially in the first 10 picks, was kind of like a taboo thing to do. But I think the league's kind of gotten over that, especially with some of the success that these first round running backs have had, recently. I would have no problems with the Saints drafting Ashton Genty in the first round. You look at the quarterback position. Who knows what they're going to do with Derek Carr? You got Spencer Rattler on the roster as well. But if you get to that ninth pick and one of the quarterbacks that they have graded as a first round pick is there, take him. Why not? Right? Again, you the Saints would have to really try hard to mess this thing up because they need every position imaginable. And you could look on the defensive side of the ball, starting on the defensive line. This is where I would go with the pick. I would go with the defensive lineman simply because you're bringing in Brandon Staley, right? A guy who runs a 3-4 defense. Now, him running a 3-4 really isn't a big deal to me because in the NFL, defenses aren't in their base packages like 90% of the time. 90% of the time, they're in like nickel packages. So it's not necessarily going to be a 3-4. It's going to be him running a 4 down front. But the thing is, with his scheme, is he likes his defensive linemen to play 1.5 gaps in the run game. So traditionally you have 1 gap and 2 gap, right? 1 gap, you're responsible for a gap. 2 gap, you have bigger bodies on the line, and you kind of attack the offensive lineman and read the running back, and you're sort of responsible for 2 gaps. Obviously, why it's called 2 gapping, right? But then in his defense, you have kind of a gap and a half where you're responsible for a gap, but you're kind of also peeking at another gap, right? Gap and a half. And for that, you need players that are able to take on those blocks and, really hold their own in the run game and be able to shed. And the Saints right now really don't have the dogs to do that. If we're being honest, they have been abysmal. They've had abysmal run defense the past few years, right? Let's just be honest here. And um, so with Staley coming over and him employing that gap and a half defensive line is a serious area of need. You look at the defensive line right now, Cam Jordan up there in his age. They're losing Chase Young if they don't decide to sign him. Um, you got Colin Saunders, who is a good rotational piece, but that's just that. He's a rotational piece. And then you got Brian Brissy, who is more of a pass rush specialist, right? He's not a guy you want to see on rundowns, really. Like, he was actually really bad against the run last year, if we're being honest. So defensive line is probably up there at the top of the list, at least in my opinion, in terms of what the Saints need. And linebacker as well. Pete Werner can't stay healthy again. Like, we've seen him play at really high levels and then started to suffer injuries, and now he's kind of just another guy out there. Demario Davis, Hall of Fame career, but again, getting up there in age, we kind of sort of seen him slow down a little bit. And yeah, like they could use a juice linebacker, right? A guy to provide some juice on defense that can fly sideline to sideline. Why not? Again, hard to screw this pickup. You look at the secondary, the safeties. You got Tyrann Mathieu, another guy getting up there in age that you can't count on forever. There were multiple times last year that he had to come out of the game because he, pulled his hamstring or he hurt himself or, just something, right? And the other safeties are what? Will Harris, who's a free agent, and Jordan Howden, who really hasn't panned out like we hoped. So if you want to go with a safety, cool. By all means, draft a safety. Like, again, you can't go wrong with pretty much anything that the Saints want to draft. And again, look at the cornerback position. No more Marshawn Lattimore. You have Kool-Aid McKinstry, Alante Taylor, and am I forgetting anybody? I don't think I am, right? Kool-Aid McKinstry, Alante Taylor, Paulson Adebo is a free agent, and he's coming off a really bad injury. You lost Lattimore. Draft a corner. They could use a cornerback. Draft a guy to play alongside Kool-Aid on the outside so that Alontae Taylor can bump back inside at that slot position where he was so good last year. So literally any way that the Saints decide to play this thing is the right way, right? Like they would have to try to they would have to actively try to sabotage this thing to screw it up. And I think they have like what 4 or 5 picks in the first 100 something picks, so they have a lot of capital to work with. I think I read the other day they have like the ninth most draft capital. So look, the Saints, they whether they want to admit it or not, is it's a rebuild year, right? But man, the difference that good coaching and a good draft can make, it can make all the difference in the world. It can take a 3-year rebuild and turn it into a 1-year rebuild, right? The Saints have this new coaching staff, full of energy, younger guys just ready to get to work, eager. If they can hit on this draft, huge if, I know, right? If they can hit on this draft, though, they have a chance to be competitive a lot sooner rather than later. Let me know who you guys want to see the Saints draft with that ninth overall pick in the comments. Appreciate you guys watching. Peace.